Good evening. My name is David Leinster, and I'm the CEO of Contemporary Calgary. And I'd like to welcome you all here in person and those of us who are joining us on our live stream to tonight's public program, A Discussion with Ryan Sluggett, featuring a special screening of his amazing new work, Ed Terrestrial, which I had the pleasure of seeing just last week at Trepannier Gallery. I'd like to begin by honoring and acknowledging that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Treaty 7 First Nations, including the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, the Kainai, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, and the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3, and all the people who make their homes here in Treaty 7. We also acknowledge that we are immediately adjacent to the Bow River, a site that has huge resonance with us today and with Indigenous populations for thousands of years. Tonight's screening and conversation are a part of the Everywhere We Are exhibition, which is a two-part exhibition co-curated by Contemporary Calgary and the University of Calgary Nickel Galleries. Before I welcome my good friend Ed Terrestrial to say a few words and to introduce Ryan, I'd like to thank the people who make tonight's talk in this exhibition possible. This exhibition is presented by Peter and Jan Tertzakian and is supported by Chubb Lloyd Sad and Novacord. We're also very grateful to the exhibition benefactors, Michael and Renee Timms, thank you very much, and exhibition patrons Karen Radford, Jason Grylowski, Sharon Martins, Aaron Thrall, and Peter Johnson. And of course, we're supported by CADA, the Alberta Foundation for the Arts, the Canada Council, the City of Calgary, and the Rosé Foundation. Tonight's a real treat for me, as I've always really loved Ryan's work, as I'm sure that's why many of you are joining tonight. I used to work in communications and branding, and Rita Saskis, a very well-known and very talented designer in the community, had a wonderful painting of Ryan's in her boardroom, which was based on a Hogarth painting. And I could swear I could see people I knew in this painting, and it really spurred such amazing creativity when you were in that space. And I've always been really engaged in Ryan's practice. Later in 2013, Eve and Kevin sent out a mailer with one of Ryan's new works, Egg in a Cup. And it was a gorgeous painting of a boiled egg in a silver fancy decorative cup. And I hate these types of runny eggs in my family. It's always this controversy of whether we should make them or not. So I thought I should buy this painting for my wife, Colleen, for her birthday. But it was sold before the show even opened to Ken Bradley, who is with us tonight in the collection. Everywhere We Are is his collection. I remember when we opened the crate for that painting for this show, I was very relieved as I didn't realize the painting was 7 feet tall. But it was a wonderful work to see again in person. And we're really privileged that Ryan's work was included in the show. With that, I would like to introduce and welcome Ed Terrestrial to the stage to introduce our artist. And thanks to you all for being here tonight.
Thank you, David. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Firstly, thank you to the staff of Contemporary Calgary, particularly to curators Kanika Anand and Ryan Doherty and Kate Silver, the Director of Marketing and Communications, who in very, very short order, less than a week, in fact, organized this event. A heartfelt thanks to the team here. If you were to visit Trepannier over the next couple of weeks, you would walk into an exhibition of Ryan Sluggett's latest work, a series of paintings, drawings, and a video which is about to be presented on a monitor that is suspended from the ceiling and has the appearance of having been thrown out of a window of a 40-story building and landed on a splattered Ed Terrestrial, the main character of the video. The exhibition buzzes with energy. I've always thought of Ryan as a satirist, a person who is a keen observer and commentator of the scene, an artist whose work is in tune with the zeitgeist of our times. As Jackson Arn has written about Ed Terrestrial, it's never easy to make art that's deliberately, self-consciously about society. To fail is to invite ridicule, and sometimes to succeed is to invite even more. The difficulty of the problem has led too many artists and critics to conclude that it's pointless to try. A hedged managerial sort of conclusion. I'll say this much: For Ed Terrestrial, Sluggett has developed a style of animation that exposes the malevolence lurking beneath cozy, infantilizing entertainment, the sludge lurking behind good taste, and the queasy cocktail of interest and disinterest that we've all been drinking. And anyone who doesn't see the urgency of making art about these things has been living in a cave. This is Ryan Sluggett's 10th or 11th animation since he graduated from the University of the Arts in Alberta in 2003. Unlike paintings, which can take months to make, the animated works take years. This one took nearly 3. I recently asked Ryan what it was about the medium that attracted him and what prompted him to pursue such an ambitious project. He said this: "Capital A animation has an unexplored history among the fine art crowd. This makes the medium propitious to me. A contemporary Pixar picture has dozens of engineers doing lighting alone, whole units of workers endlessly developing accurate renditions of water droplets, for example. I've always been resistant to this mechanized grandiosity. I do shitty Pixar. The feeling of being overwhelmed by a bigger art machine is an important part of the Ed narrative too." And now for the stats. Ryan was born in Calgary. He's a local boy. He received his BFA with distinction in painting from the University of the Arts in Alberta in 2003, and his MFA from the University of California, Los Angeles in 2011, where he's been living ever since, and now I think making a move to New York City with his wife, Lily. He's had many solo exhibitions, 9 at our gallery, including the one titled Ego and the Ed, which is currently on now. Selected group exhibitions of note include Summer Bomb Pop, Collections in Dialogue at the Tang Museum, New York in 2021. Everywhere You Are, Contemporary Calgary, which is part of it's currently on now. Out of Sight, New Acquisitions, the Vancouver Art Gallery in 2014, and Made in LA at the Hammer Museum Biennial. He has successfully completed numerous commissions. In 2013, he completed a major commission for the Ivey School of Business at Western Ontario University in London, Ontario. This large multi-paneled work was comprised of 3 panels measuring 8 feet by 8 feet for an overall dimension of 8 by 24 feet. In 2015, Sluggett completed a commission for a major video piece for a private collector in the United States, and he has recently completed a painting commission for a Canadian collector, actually someone living here in Calgary. He's in many numerous public collections, including the Booth Collection at the University of Chicago, the Hammer Museum, Los Angeles, the Vancouver Art Gallery, Glenville Museum, Calgary, the Rebel Collection, Florida, the Alberta Foundation for the Arts Collection, Edmonton, and numerous private and corporate collections throughout Canada and the US. And without further ado, let's watch the film. Thank you.
At 7,500,000, at 7,500,000 pounds. At 7,500,000 pounds. 7.5. That's 7,500,000 pounds. That's 7,500,000 pounds. 8 million pounds. So Jasmine's bidder, 8 million pounds on the telephone at 8 million pounds. Here on my left at 8 million pounds, 8,500,000. At 8,500,000. It's Gregoire's bidder at 8,500,000. At 8,500,000. At 8,500,000. Still on my right at 8,500,000. Let's try another one at 10 million pounds. 15,200,000 here at 10 million pounds. No, next bid's 5.
All the paintings of this edition used the convention of perspective, which is unique to European art. Now, perspective centers everything on the eye of the beholder. It is like a beam from a lighthouse, only instead of light traveling outwards, appearances travel in. And our tradition of art called those appearances reality.
10,500,000. 15. At 10,500,000. Still here at 10,500,000. At 10,500,000 pounds. 15,500,000. 10,500,000.
Perspective makes the eye the center of the visible world. But the human eye can only be in one place at a time. It takes its visible world with it as it walks.
15,500,000 pounds. Patty's bidder at 15.5. 15,600,000. At 11 million pounds. By far. At 11 million, 15 million, 6.
It was no longer so easy to think of appearances always traveling regularly to a single center.
Great, yeah, 15 million, 6. So Venus Spitter at 11 million. Try one more. At 15 million, 600.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that film. I certainly did. My name is Kanika Anand, and I'm the Associate Curator here at Contemporary Calgary. I'm extremely pleased to invite Ryan Sluggett on for a conversation to share some insights about the film and his practice. Welcome, Ryan.
Fun for coming.
Blob, slime, sludge, squishy characters play the protagonists in your work, often performing a social satire. In this case, it's played out in a movie theater, right, like this one. Does tonight's program also qualify as a heady cocktail of entertainment and good taste? And how would you introduce the film to our audiences today?
Yeah, thanks so much for coming, and it's so cool to be here with this on the perfect shape screen for this crazy video I was working on kind of over the last few years, in part just in little pieces. But yeah, good taste, definitely. You can tell that I'm really into, my whole MO is good taste. There's a character in the film that was being waterboarded by a Gerhard Richter painting, the benchmark of good taste. But I like being on stage here because it's funny, before I had done the talk show part at the end, I had sort of storyboarded and planned to have this like really long, like 45-minute long panel discussion as the ending of the video to kind of cut against this narrative arc that we're all used to. But instead I sort of reintroduce those three characters from the three different stories, almost as these celebrities, right, that are talking over each other, sort of talking past each other, or focused on self-promotion, which is why I'm here tonight, to self-promote. The introduction. So to introduce the piece, I would just say, okay. I knew that it was going to be about this idea, just generally about the idea of how to hold one's attention, or when one's attention is held, right? So sort of in the media. But as I was storyboarding it, I kind of felt like the whole thing was designed in a way to be like a failure. Almost it's designed to be like really over, right? Like everything is like over orchestrated, over this character is overly universalized. He's like this global dude guy, right? And so all of that implies, I guess, and it sort of touches on the art world and ideas of maybe like striving, and just in general what that kind of means, in our society maybe today, and just the kind of anxiety that can be produced by that kind of striving.
Well, you're kind of led into my second question. The film is a comment on cliched and sci-fi cinematic storytelling of greed and heroism, as well as our indulgent lifestyles with overconsumption and excess. Can you share with us a little bit about how you went about scripting the film, and what was the impetus that started it all? You did kind of share with us the process of how you were storyboarding, but how did it all begin?
Yeah, that's not something I have ever done before either, but I sort of thought I was going to emulate a kind of industry type standard. But yeah, so I guess because I knew that the general idea was about this idea of holding one's attention span and the kind of lengths that can be gone to for that to happen. I guess because I knew that, I knew that I needed a structure, and I had gone years before to UCLA and taken a screenwriting class, actually. And it was the kind of class that teaches you those like incredibly formulaic, the kind of stuff that like Charlie Kaufman makes fun of in Adaptation so well. It's a very good Nicolas Cage movie. So yeah, I guess because I needed a structure, and I sort of was perversely almost inspired by that. So it's like, right, you've got the 3 acts that increase in intensity, and then there's that sandwiched between like an introduction where as a viewer you're generally sort of deciding whether you're going to like this movie or not, and then an ending where you pass judgment, like either quickly or maybe it takes longer, on whether it all came together, whether there was a good conclusion to it all. So yeah, the storyboarding helped with that, but also just, I guess I consciously knew that I was like dressing up these kind of earthy kind of ideas. I guess there's like class struggle in there, and just, you know, or maybe earthy things, but in this like kind of in this astronomical airhead character, Ed.
No, it's hard not to like the film. But yes, that's helpful to kind of understand your process as well. And backtracking a little, can you also tell us about how you came to make animation films and how the medium lends itself to the practice, with specific reference to the dynamic between still and moving images in your work? Additionally, do you feel like animation lends you certain freedoms with respect to how you construct narrative, and how important is narrative in your films?
Yeah, okay, so still and moving images are they have something similar to them in that they both have duration in them. It's just, I guess with a painting, you get to make up the duration, and in a video, it's kind of set for you. So I could talk about some recent works. In 2015, I made a piece called All Inclusive, and that one was probably the closest in terms of like duration to a painting. So I was making kind of an animation that was almost like a painting. I guess you call it kind of static, or sorry, limited animation, and where it's not like a really fluid animation. It's just like a sequence of like, so each scene is held for about 30 seconds and there's not much happening in it really. It was called All Inclusive because it follows over the course of a day, sort of consumption, and like it's like people at all inclusive resort. So they wake up in the morning and then it ends at night, and it's an endless loop. But it was the closest to being like a painting. And it really didn't work unless it was projected really big, sort of like mural size, so that you can't really take it all in at once. And you sort of just, you know, you see the parts of it almost like how you do in a painting. And then the year sort of after that, so 2016, I made a piece where I was trying to do almost the opposite. And that one was called Recliner with Escapist Literature. And that one, so I made a sculpture of a recliner, but it was like a fake modern kind of recliner. So it's like white, powder coated, and made out of stainless steel. And they're cut into the bottom of it, sort of like where you discard your book or something that you're reading. There was a piece of plexiglass in the shape of a book, and the projection mounted underneath the whole thing. So the animation in that one was like this really flat, kind of like run-on sentence of a soap opera, like a confusing soap opera. And I mean, it could have been called almost like Recliner with mind-numbing literature. It's just like this kind of endless sort of thing. So I guess, and then that was the last piece before I made this, and I was trying to make it really like unflat. I was trying to unflatten things and make it more, you know, a little bit less about sculpture, a little bit more about narrative, and play with narrative. So yeah, I guess you asked about the freedom inherent maybe to animation. There is some kind of obvious freedoms in a way. You know, theoretically, someone could just make out of like garbage and you know, paper and drawings and stuff. You can make the setting, you can have actors, you can, you know, theoretically do stuff on a really low budget, and that's kind of freeing. But kind of running against that at the same time in a kind of an interesting way is this history of animation in relation to the art world. There's just like basically no one that really thrives as animators in the art world. And I think it's something to do with just how married the form was to industrialized kind of era and that kind of commercialized. And it's sort of seen a little bit like how photography used to be, maybe. So it has this kind of like a pretty interesting baggage and history to it, I think, that I'm trying to use a bit in my work sometimes. And then you asked about narrative. Narrative is important in my work, but it's not the engine really. I think I do use narrative, but I think because of my training in art, I sort of think of things more like structuralist, where if the idea, like, so this one kind of needed a narrative, so I went and found one more than it being like the engine. I have more of a bigger picture, and then I can sprinkle in narrative, mixed of course with like abstraction and layering of all kinds of stuff.
The big question, what else is in the works, and what can we expect out of the Sluggett studio in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so actually at Trepanier Bear right now in the window, there's a drawing of, it's called the Two Thomas Moores, and it's like these two heads of Thomas More colliding. And I'm trying to think of a way, because I was really fascinated by, I read Utopia again recently. It's a short little volume, but it has this really interesting ending to it, and I'm trying to think of a way that I can use that kind of structure in the next animation that I make. So it kind of, the whole book lifts up as if he's discovering this like cooperative world that could be so perfect, and he's buying into it. And then in the last couple sentences, Thomas More kind of, it all sort of deflates. And it's really impossible to tell just the style and how it's written and everything. It's hard, and there's been debate about whether it's this kind of savage satire about apathy, or whether it's actually maybe apathetic. And it is unsettling. It's weird when you read it, and then I've been reading other works kind of in that genre, the kind of utopic socialist literary genre. So like Gulliver's Travels, William Morris's News from Nowhere, and some Octavia Butler works that are really amazing. But a lot of them kind of riff back on that ending in Utopia, and that kind of unsettling. So people are always waking up, or they're falling asleep, and you know, things are good, things are bad, and it kind of has this dualism of that I think we carry around in us to different degrees, right? About whether we think how the world is a better place, or we can't do anything. And so that kind of unsettling structure is what I'm trying to work on for the next one. Yeah.
Sure, we'll definitely look forward to that. And good luck with your ongoing projects. With that, we invite the audiences and the audience online and in person to ask Ryan a few questions or share their observations or comments. If anyone has any questions.
I'll come around with the mic. Very well, I'm walking through. If anyone wants
Thank
to
you, Katie.
raise their hand, we've got Ken over here. Put you on the spotlight.
Well, first things first, glad to see, Ryan, that you're on the mend, and welcome to Calgary.
Thanks. Ken.
And congratulations on the new show. I'm interested in the connection between your paintings, paperworks, and your video film works, particularly with respect to collage and assemblage. And I know there's been a lot written, very good work actually written on your interest in assemblage and collage. There's a line in the film that I think is really interesting, and it goes something to the effect, does my voice interfere or interrupt your projections? And what I'm interested in understanding is, how does the use of sound and music and animation, how does that play into what we see in your paperworks and your paintings in terms of your interest in collage? Because you've talked a lot about collage, and I'm just kind of interested in that. And then the second question I have has to do with your comment just a few minutes ago, where you talk about duration. And what I find very interesting is that in the current show at Trepanier Bear, there's this magnificent long paperwork, which when I saw it, and in the next room, of course, there is the film. And when I saw the paperwork, one can almost read that as sort of screenshots of the moving film. So I'm interested if you could just talk to us about how collage and assemblage informs from your paper work and your paintings, how that informs your videos and film work.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's good. Screenshots, that's interesting, because that drawing, which is kind of related in some ways to this self-critique, I guess, in a way. It's called Enter the Slug Boutique, and it's kind of like as if I had like a department store in a suburb, like that's kind of apocalyptic suburb. And I was working on it and doing it just as painting and drawing right on there, and it just wasn't working. And I've set it aside for a long time, and in the meantime I'd been learning this computer program where you're like, all of a sudden you're able to, like, just with a click of a button, you started building worlds. And something about that came together with that drawing, and it made it seem like it added. So I took the drawing and put it into the program and started wrapping it around different shapes and then reprinting it out and pasting it back on. And something about that whole process made it more like it was like a shopping mall. It was like a digital space, like people are all shopping online now. It sort of just felt right. So sometimes the kind of the medium can solve a problem for you, and collage in general is kind of like that in a way. It's funny. It's like I'll be working on something and it won't work, and then I have to come back to it and almost like chop something into it and put something that doesn't belong there and then see what happens. And that's maybe a way of my natural sort of illustrative tendency to be sort of disrupted a bit with collage. Or collage is just great because you can put things together and then just see like what comes out when you put two things together that don't really belong together. Sorry, now I'm blanking on the first part. What was your first question?
Collage now almost become, oh, sorry. I think you've written something to the effect that collage now almost doesn't matter. And then Alex Nagel, in his introductory essay to a previous show, he spoke, it was really interesting in terms of place within the context of Western art, sort of from medieval to contemporary, how collage has was so important, and then it became almost, it disappeared. And you yourself have said that. So what I see in the film, and why I love the video work in the film, is that there are just so many moments in it where I'm just seeing collage paperworks, like just because you're such a beautiful drawer, and so I see the kind of, with the introduction now of narrative, scripts and music, and I think the music that you chose for the film is really interesting,
Music,
because it's very disruptive, and it is causing you to keep attention. And where you had the Richter painting, what was so interesting for me was, you quickly start to focus on how high is the bidding going to go. So you just keep watching it from that point of view. So I find that to be really interesting. And I just bring it back to how the movement that we see in video, and now the sound, how that almost serves to make us once again very conscious of your use of collage, that all of a sudden it's no longer a flat plane, because I think that's what you wrote, that we now take it, it's so common that it's useful, that its original purpose and how it has been used by various artists at various times, we now just take it for granted.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's flat in a way. Yeah, because collage has been around now for, over a century, I guess. And it's an ongoing thing for me, because I'll make a collage, and then, video in general is really fun to work with, because no matter what you're doing, when I started making animations, I was just like taking pictures in the studio of all kinds of garbage and stuff that I'd find and it was just pretty open and experimental, but it always flattened back to just this like photograph. So all it was a sequence of photographs at the end of it. And there was something really satisfying about taking like a large world and then flattening it into a tiny space. But yeah, thanks for that. The music part is new to me, and I'm like developing and learning. Of course, when I'm watching it, I'm just like aware of every glitch and every thing, but that's all part of it, because it's just one person making it in a way. So it's not this perfectly smooth machine groomed thing like we're used to seeing, I guess. But the choice of disco was pretty deliberate. I think I wanted something that was like very decadent and sort of feeling kind of late stagey, but like relentless. There's like sort of a relentless quality of disco. And it sort of was a nice sort of backdrop to puncture in with different like gross sounds, squishy sounds and all that sort of stuff. Like some of it was classic cartoon sounds, and yeah, like concrete sound, I guess, is an interesting history that I'm learning about too. And just like making the two go together in a way also comes up with a lot more. Like the Richter scene for me, of course, that narrative is like, the arc of that is just like, how high is it going to go, like you were saying. But that was me holding back and like having more of a static scene and just letting the sound carry it a little bit further. So yeah.
So I actually have a question on the Gerhard Richter.
Oh, cool.
I actually used to work at Sotheby's in London. And I think, and you're really testing my memory here, but I think that was from a 2017 auction on his iceberg painting.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. That was a phenomenal artwork.
Yeah.
Why did you select that soundbite from any auction?
Well, it was available on YouTube, so that was one thing. I liked the painting. I liked how it looked. It kind of set the stage, this icy gallery, and the guy's voice is great. It's very, elite voice. It was very, I just liked the pacing. I listened to a whole bunch of auctions. I knew I wanted an auction, and I was gonna do kind of like the one where the guy is like that kind of thing, or I was gonna stage it like that. But this one just was such a nice, it was the right amount of time, and is Gerhard Richter. He's an easy target, but it's still.
So the voice is Oliver Barker. And he, if you guys have
right.
ever watched any of his auctions, he is quite like charismatic.
Very smooth.
And his
yeah.
voice just kind of made my ears perk earlier because I worked with him for many years, but it was,
that's awesome.
It was really funny. Do you have any other questions in the audience? Okay, one over here.
Who was the attention getter that would have inspired this film?
Sorry, the attention getter?
Yeah, there, because it deals with attention getting. Was there one in real life that inspired the film?
Oh, not any one in particular, maybe, but just, in general, society in general. We're all coping with our narcissism and social media and all that. I think I don't know. It just seemed like, and also just I think is more thinking about like in a gallery. There's something interesting about video because you always walk in, and you're like, okay, where am I? Am I in the middle of it? Am I beginning? Oh God, I got to deal with this thing, and you never know how long it's gonna be, and it's the time is ticking. It's like this scenario here at the end of the film where you're not sure. Oh, when's this gonna wrap up? That's kind of why I was thinking I was going to make it have a really long panel discussion at the end, just to flatten it out. But yeah, it wasn't any one particular person.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to open it up to the online engagement just in case as a last call. I think that's it for Q&A. I think that's it, Kanika.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ryan. And thank you to our audiences in person, all of you seated here and online. We hope you have a good evening and we hope to see you back at the gallery. We have an exciting series of exhibitions opening November 4th. 3 solo shows by Simone Elizabeth Saunders, who's based very much here in Calgary, Maya Baudry from Vancouver, and Corylyn Tetz based in Montreal. So we hope to see you all. That opens November 4th, and have a great evening. Thank you.